This is Joshua Hart here for Seconds Out, here with Nick Campbell today over Zoom. Nick, you've just said off camera that you feel you know why I've brought you on today. I think we're on the same wavelength. But first of all, how is everything, mate? You all good?
Yeah, all good, man. All good. Had a great weekend in Belfast, watching the fights, and unbelievable atmosphere. Belfast, a brilliant fight city, and I was lucky enough to have some tickets to go and watch the fight. So, feeling blessed and all good.
Well, we'll dive straight into the action in Belfast. We'll go straight to that main event. Paddy Donovan, your good friend, versus Lewis Crocker. A brilliant fight on paper. We could see, you mentioned how good the atmosphere was, a sold out crowd, an all Irish clash. I think a lot of people were saying the biggest all Irish fight of all time. Um, and a big fight like that, you expect the ending to be spoke about regardless of how it goes. But I don't think any of us expected to be sat here talking about a disqualification and just an absolutely chaotic ending to that fight. What was your immediate feelings to the disqualification?
It was. I was obviously had pretty good seats near the ring, but didn't actually know what had happened. It took us about 5 minutes to work out, had Paddy been disqualified? What? I couldn't really hear the bell from where I was. You know, you knew that it was around about the bell, but you weren't sure if it was before or after. It was very chaotic. Obviously, there was trouble in the crowd right after the fight, so it was a pretty chaotic end to the fight. But by the time we'd realised that Paddy had been disqualified, everything that had happened, it was really disappointing. I was gutted for Paddy. He'd fought a punch perfect performance. He completely beat the brakes off Lewis Crocker, and yeah, kind of during the fight was very disheartened for him to be docked the 2 points. I thought both guys were as bad as one another when it came to the head. Paddy had a lot of head movement. Lewis was constantly leading with the head. It was kind of six of one, half a dozen of the other. So yeah, kind of real disappointment for Paddy. Obviously, seeing how upset he was. He had that world title shot basically in the palm of his hands, and to have it snatched away in the way that he did, it was pretty frustrating. Being a supporter of Paddy, and yeah, disappointing, really disappointing.
Talking on the fight itself, we come out in round one, and like you mentioned, Lewis Crocker leading with the head, Paddy kind of sitting on that guard but moving his head a bit more and creating the movement in the fight. Do you feel the referee should have had a bit more input? Obviously, a lot of penalisation on Paddy Donovan, but do you feel a bit more should have been said to Lewis Crocker in that scenario?
Thought the referee handled it terribly all round. I don't think any of it was deliberate. It was all accidental. It was both caused equally by both men. So for me, there should have been no points deducted for anybody. I don't think any of the cuts that Lewis suffered were caused by clashes of the head. I think it was punches and good boxing work from Paddy. So yeah, I think the referee just handled it terribly. Paddy was fighting almost two guys in there, and the ref and Lewis. And then, everything was stacked against him. He's in the away town. He's obviously against the away support. He's obviously fighting the home fighter. And yeah, like it was, everything was stacked against him. And I thought, given the fact that he had all that stacked against him, his performance was incredible. He kind of, when Lewis spoke about how he had been there and done it before, boxed as the main event, done this, done that. It looked the other way around. It looked like Paddy'd been there and boxed, been the main event whatever it is, five, six times. And I just thought it was an incredible performance when you take all that into account.
How tough is it for Paddy? Because obviously we were just talking about this off camera about that feeling of a defeat, but usually with a defeat you kind of know where you went wrong on the night. Apart from that shot after the bell, like you said, it was punch perfect from Paddy in that fight, wasn't it?
Yeah, listen, I think just on that punch after the bell, I think, it wasn't intentional. He was in the motion, throwing a combination. It was the final punch. Like, he dropped Lewis earlier in the round. And he was in there to try and get the job done. He'd already been deducted 2 points. He's doing everything he can to take it out of the judge's hands, to take any doubt away. So, yeah, It was after the bell, when you can hear the bell so clearly on the microphone after the fight on the TV, you can see that it was after the bell, but it wasn't intentional. It should probably, Lewis should be given 5 minutes to recover. If he can't continue, it should then go to the scorecards. That's how I see it. But I think the disqualification was totally disproportionate to the offence.
You mentioned obviously on the TV and everything, and the commentators being able to hear the bell, but I can second that in the fact of being in the arena for the fight. It was very hard to hear the bell. I think a lot of us guys on the media row hadn't noticed that the round had ended. Do you feel there should have been a little bit more lenience for Paddy? Yes, okay, the shot was after, but like you said, give the 5 minutes. Do you feel the disqualification very harsh? Probably the most harsh thing they could have done.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, some of the comments post fight, like Lewis says, he heard the bell and dropped his hands. When the punch landed, his hands were up here. So, it's like point scoring in it to try and gain a bit of sympathy. Listen, Lewis is a warrior. He's got my utmost respect. He really had to dig in at times. Paddy was putting him under a tremendous amount of pressure, but Paddy was the better fighter on the night. We don't need to come out and make excuses now about I heard the bell and dropped my hands and get hit with a shot. He was just outclassed. That's all there was to it. I don't think that the clash of heads made any difference to the outcome of the fight. He was getting bashed up anyway. I know that there's been a big, deal made about this elbow, but I think if you watch the fight, Paddy was trying to create a bit of distance when Lewis came in using his lead hand, and on that occasion he just got it wrong, caught him with the elbow. If anything, that's the one instance in the fight where I could maybe say, you know what, like fair enough, like you've caught him with your elbow there. It's fair enough to be a point deduction, but I don't think it was intentional, and I don't like it was an isolated incident. So that shows you it was an accident. There wasn't any malice. There wasn't any intention. And you know what? It's the fight game as well. These things happen. Do you know what I mean? It's a fight at the end of the day. You're going to be a bit of rough and tough. You're going to get clipped. You might have a clash of heads. You might take an elbow every now and again. But that's what every boxer signs up to.
And then post fight, we've seen an awful lot of talk about what happens next from here. I know you've given your view on Twitter, which has led to a bit of back and forth between yourself and Billy Nelson. Just before we come on to the back and forth here, um, just give us your view on what needs to happen next for those who haven't seen your Twitter.
Listen, I think the only fight that makes sense for Lewis is a rematch, and the only fight that makes sense for Paddy. Well, I say for Paddy, Paddy's got other avenues. His star's risen. His profile's much higher now after this fight. So I know that there's an IBF appeal at the moment, and we're obviously all gonna wait to see what happens with that and what they rule. I'm hoping that they'll, push for a mandatory rematch before any of the mandatory challenge I think can take place. So that'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But I think for Lewis, he needs to really run it back, see if he can overturn, the first fight, because Paddy won the fight despite the disqualification, in my opinion. And for Paddy, I suppose it would be a bit of poetic justice if he got the rematch, gets a chance to go out and do what he done again and show that it was no fluke and all the hard work he's been doing is justified. But yeah, for me, that's the fight that needs to be next for both men, the rematch.
Could you understand from Lewis Crocker's point of view if he is to just swerve this rematch for now and move into that world title fight when called to do so?
Oh, 100%. Listen, I've had a lot of back and forth with Billy on Twitter. I've obviously touched a nerve or something like that, but he's got to do the best for his fighter. And if the IBF rule, you know what, we are happy with the outcome, the disqualification, and whatever they decide, he's obviously going to take that fight for Lewis. It's his chance to become a world champion, to make a lot of money in the process. You know, it'd be crazy if you had the chance for a world title fight or to rematch somebody who beat the brakes off you. It's an easy decision for Lewis and his team. Do you know what I mean? And then maybe down the line, if Lewis goes on to win that, or I don't know, they can have the rematch. But yeah, if the IBF title shot's there, then of course, listen, I understand. As much as I support Paddy. Paddy's a friend. I want him to get that rematch and to, get the right decision. Of course, he's going to take that title fight if it's there. That makes complete sense. despite, my feeling on it. That's the way it is.
Where do you feel more money lies? Do you feel there's more money in the IBF mandatory shot and as the getting the challengers split, or a big rematch in the summer with Paddy Donovan? With Eddie Hearn's already given his view and said you could take this fight back to Belfast, or you could take it to Dublin. You could take it to a bigger venue, and this fight was already big. Imagine how much bigger a rematch is going to be.
Yeah, the rematch is massive. The rematch is huge. The one thing that both fighters have got in their favour as well is, they're both represented by Eddie. So it's an easy fight to promote. It's an easy fight to put together if that's what the outcome is. And I think it's arguably, two, three times bigger than the first fight. The only thing is, where is it going to be? Is it going to be Belfast again? Does it move down to Dublin at the Three Arena? Does it go to Limerick to Croke Park? There's plenty of options. Or is it a neutral ground? I think maybe, Paddy deserves to have the home advantage this time, given his performance in the first fight. But listen, he wouldn't have any problem going and fighting in Belfast again. But obviously, the SSE Hydro in Belfast is only 8,000 seater, so I think we're looking at maybe a 20,000, 25,000 seater we're needing for this rematch with the amount of interest and intrigue there's going to be in it. It's going to be a huge fight.
Absolutely. I've just gone and brought up a few of the back and forth you've had with Billy. I thought it was only stemmed off one tweet, but it turns out it's stemmed off two. Um, what have you made of this back and forth that you and Billy, especially when obviously I know you and Billy have a lot of respect for each other,
Yeah.
but it does seem that, you know, different opinions and you can't really come to an agreement on it, can you?
Nah, listen, the first tweet that I put out was literally saying that rematch makes a lot of sense in my humble opinion. That's all this is, my humble opinion. You don't need to agree with it. You can agree with it, whatever you want to do. Do you know what I mean? That's just my opinion. Billy's taken exception to that. Chose to be pretty disrespectful when he said that, my opinion means zero. So I countered him with, your opinion in the corner obviously meant zero on the night, and then we've went from there. And yeah, listen, I just felt a little bit disrespected by him. That Billy's your kind of typical. He'll try and rubbish whatever I say by painting a narrative to help it suit his argument, which is fine. At the end of the day, it's just my opinion. You don't need to agree with it. You don't need to like it. It is what it is. He's taken exception to it. He's decided to engage me, and I've thought, you know what? Why not? It's good press, good to be out in the public, good to get your point across, good to have a little bit of debate, but no hard feelings at all. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. He'll probably say that I'm a wanker now or whatever, but it is what it is. What can I do?
The tweet I've just brought up here, you saying you enjoyed the Teddy Atlas and his take on it, to him saying that was Teddy there? No. What do you make of that argument that he's made? And obviously he's trying to push Sonny Edwards' point across to you.
I'd
And he
say if anything, you need to take somebody who watched it on the TV because they've got the much better picture than somebody who's sitting at the side of the ring. Teddy Atlas is one of the most respected boxing pundits, trainers in the past, however many years I can remember. I think he's trained 18 world champions across 7 weight classes. If you're going to take anybody's opinion in boxing, Teddy Atlas is probably one of the top opinions to take. Sonny Edwards, a former world champion, he's entitled to his opinion. I respect his opinion. But on this occasion, I'm always going to listen to Teddy Atlas over Billy Nelson and Sonny Edwards, unfortunately. So it is what it is. That was a little bit of a dig, to be honest. That whole tweet in the first, I knew it would get a reaction, and it did. So happy days. 1-0.
1-0. Um, just moving away from this, a lot of talk again about the heavyweights has started to spark back up recently. The most notable thing in this division recently has appeared last night, or yesterday morning even. Dillian White is now out of the fight with Joe Joyce, sadly, and we won't be seeing that main event. Gutted, first of all, what was your thoughts when you saw that?
Yeah, listen, gutted for both men. I wonder if there's maybe a different reason behind it. Who knows? I know that Dylan White pulled out the Otto Wallen fight when he got offered the Tyson Fury fight for obvious financial reasons. I can think of a couple of million reasons why he would, pull out of that fight to take another. So maybe Dylan's been offered another fight. Who knows? I don't know. Speculation. I know absolutely nothing as well. By the way, that's just purely me thinking out loud. But if it is a hand injury gutted for him, I think him and Joe Joyce was a massive fight. Disappointing for fight fans as well. It was a good opportunity for both men to push their names back up into that, kind of top 20, talking about getting on the Riyadh season shows and stuff like that. So disappointing for fight fans and for both fighters. But I seen this morning that Philip Hergovich might be stepping in. Obviously, they had a fight back in the 2016 Olympics, which Joe Joyce won. I think things have kind of progressed on since their amateur days. Both coming off a loss, both looking to get back out and get active, put their name back up there. So I think that's another great fight. And like I say, if Dylan White's falling out and you're replacing it with Filip Hergovich, it's arguably just as big a fight. So very interesting, exciting, and I hope that that fight can be made.
We know Filip Hrgović is a good fighter. We've also seen reports of Jermaine Franklin being a name linked to it. But who is your ideal name to step in? I made a video last night, which is now live on the channel, and I pushed 6 different names out there as to what could be good options. I want to know.
Okay,
I want to know who your number one. I'm going to give you a few names from the list, and I want to get. I
go.
want to. So I've said Fabio Wardley,
Okay,
Lawrence Okoli. Uh,
okay,
I can't remember. I need to try and rally my brain here. Um, Jarrell Miller,
okay.
and I'll go with one more out of the list. I think I said Jermaine Franklin as well. So out of those
Yeah,
four, which one would you be most enthused by?
I don't think the Lawrence Okoli fight makes much sense. He's fighting Reactpour, which is arguably.
I had a method around that one.
Right, okay, okay.
So my method around that one, there have been talks in the past, supposedly according to Joe Gallagher, about Joyce versus Okoli. So there's already a bit of a storyline there. So you bump Okoli up to fight Joyce, and then that's where you can bring in someone like Jermaine Franklin, a seasoned heavyweight who's not quite at that elite level. Give them
Yeah,
to
yeah,
Reactpaw, because if you want to give Reactpaw a good test to start his heavyweight journey, I think
yeah,
someone like Jermaine Franklin's perfect. So you bring in Jermaine Franklin for Reactpaw and bump Okoli up to fight Joyce.
yeah. Listen, it's aye, makes sense. Like
Mm.
both are good fights. For me, I want to see that React Poor and a Coley fight. So I'd keep that. I don't want to change that. I want to see
Mm.
that whether it's a cruiserweight or heavyweight. I think the fact it's that heavyweight makes it a little bit more interesting as well. Jarrell Miller, he's a big character. Do you know what I mean? I like him in the sense that he brings plenty of drama to the shows, the press conferences, and he can fight, man. He's a big man, big, powerful, strong man, and he has a go. You seen against Daniel Dubois, had him in trouble at points in the fight, despite getting stopped late on. I don't think Fabio Wardley makes much sense. I think Fabio Wardley's pretty close to getting a mandatory position or fighting a mandatory fight for one of the governing bodies. So probably not a fight that makes much sense for Fabio, but one that would be pretty easy to make given the fact that both Queensbury fighters now, and I'm pretty sure Fabio would fancy it if given the opportunity. And who was the last one?
Oh, I swear I've marked on again as well. So I said
Yeah.
Okoli, Wardley, Miller, and then
Oh,
Franklin.
Franklin. Yeah, listen, Frank. That would be a bit of a disappointment for me. I think Franklin is a steady enough heavyweight, but he's probably more of a, like you said, fighting somebody like React Port to see where he's at and find out where he's at. For Joyce, I don't really think a fight like that makes much sense for him now. He's kind of got to go all in. He needs a big name. He needs somebody like a Hergovich or a Dylan White to really propel himself back up there. And if he can't, then it's probably time to call it a day for him with his age and everything like that. So for me, the one name that you've not mentioned, Hergovich, is the fight that makes most sense. And I think it keeps the card where it was at previously in terms of White Joyce. Joyce Hergovich is arguably or equally as big a fight, and it manages to keep the other two heavyweight fights on the card
One
equally,
more,
good.
one more name that I did have. I've just had to go quickly refresh my memory on it. Huey Fury. What about a fight between Joyce and Huey Fury?
Yeah. Listen, that's a good fight. That's a good fight. Peter is a good trainer, very well respected. Hughie's been kind of working away in the shadows. He's been fighting with, is it GBM Sports? He's had a couple of fights,
I think
building
he's
his
just inked a promotional deal with GBM Sports.
yeah. So he's building a little bit of momentum there. He's trying to get the show back on the road and push himself up there into these big fight nights again. So aye, that's a good fight. I'm pretty sure it's one that Hughie and Peter would be very, very keen to take because, like we say, it's going to put you up there, going to boost your profile, and it's going to push you into these high profile fights. Um, but still, for me, Hergovich, with the history the two men have got, the run of form they've both been on, they're both looking to propel themselves back up into the top 20, top 10 of the heavyweight division. It's a fight that makes the most sense for me.
Absolutely. Just looking at the upper end of the division, a lot of talk is sort of coming about what the move next is now for Daniel Dubois, what's next for Anthony Joshua. Um, in the build up to what was originally set to be Dubois versus Parker, Eddie and obviously does all the interviews that he does always and said he'll wait until Dubois Parker to decide AJ's next move. Obviously, we never saw Dubois Parker. What would you like to see Anthony Joshua do next? Now that we obviously that plan's out the window for now. Who would you like to see Anthony Joshua face next if he is to go on this road to become a three-time heavyweight world champion again?
I think that Anthony Joshua and Joseph Parker will probably meet if Dubois and Usyk meet probably on the same card, probably in Riyadh. Um, I think that's probably the only that's the type of fight Joshua needs. There's no rebuilding. There's no, he's been a two-weight. He's been a two-time world champion. He wants to become a three-time world champion. Joe Parker's arguably the one guy in the division that really deserves a world title shot. So if I think the powers that be would be able to make, and it's a fight that Joe would look, I think Joe would be happy to take that as well, give him the chance to beat, overturn the result in 2000. When was it? 2018? Long
Yes.
time ago.
Yeah, a while back
Long
now.
time ago. Yeah, so that would give him a chance to, obviously chalk that one up, make it one each, and after that there'd be no denying him a world title shot if he was to beat Joseph Parker, if he was to beat Anthony Joshua. So yeah, if Dubois is going to fight Usyk, which it looks like that's what's going to happen, then I think Anthony Joshua and Joseph Parker is the fight that makes the most sense for those guys.
Who do you think wins between Dubois and Usyk?
Probably Usyk. I think you'd be foolish to bet against him. I think Dubois has made a lot of improvements under Don Charles. I think it's a tougher fight for Usyk, but I think uh, he's proved himself to be an all-time great. And although Dubois might be able to put him under a bit more pressure now, I still think Usyk will be able to outthink him and get the result. But listen, Dubois a massive puncher. There was a lot of I can't speak today, controversy about the body punch.
Mm.
So listen, he's got a chance. He's 100% got a chance. But for me, if I was put money on it, it would be on Usyk.
Do you feel Dubois can take any confidence away from that first fight, obviously, in landing that controversial shot? But if they do still legitimately believe that it was a legal punch, do you feel they can take any confidence from that, even though it is a couple years on now?
They do. They do take confidence from that. They see it as they were robbed that night.
Mm.
That it should have been counted and it should have been a knockout. So they 100% do take confidence from it. For me, yeah, listen, you probably would take confidence from it. You know you can get to him, you know you can hurt him.
Mm.
So it's definitely, yeah, 100% they can take confidence from it. But as much as Dubois has a changed fighter since then, I think Usyk performs at the level he needs to get the result. And I think he would be able to go up a gear again if he had to against Dubois. So that's the reason why I'm picking him to outthink him, get the job done by whatever means necessary that I had to do.
Just lastly, Usyk did a couple of interviews in London a couple of weeks ago and said that he was only going to have two more fights in boxing, one of them being Dubois for undisputed, and then he said for the last one he wants the UFC light heavyweight champion Alex Pereira in a crossover fight. What do you make of seeing Usyk take this? I mean, I've not got any problems with it personally. I think it's a great crossover fight. It's two of the most dominant forces in their respected areas of combat sport. Do you think that'd be an exciting clash if it is to happen?
Listen, that like we've seen all this before with Mayweather and Conor McGregor, and we've got all the YouTube stuff now, and we've got all that interest. The crossover thing's always been a thing in it
Mm,
historically. You go back to Muhammad Ali, thought the Japanese. I can't even think of the name of the guy, but like there's long history of this in
yeah.
boxing. Do you know what I mean? And it's probably more relevant nowadays than it was back then. So
Mm,
I think if it's a great fight. I think I've watched Pereira sparring a couple of boxers, Dempsey McKean,
mm,
um, the Australian boy, and big man can fight. So I'm not saying he'll beat Usyk. I don't think at all. Do you know what I mean? I think Usyk will
mm,
punch the head off him, but it would be interesting while it lasted. And Pereira seems to be a big kind of scary dude, so I'm sure he would back himself on any format to fight any man. So definitely intrigue, but obviously he's got a big fight to get through if it is Dubois next. So he'll be focusing on that and then probably looking to cash in. He'd probably get paid £100 million to fight Pereira now with the interest it would gather. So makes sense from a business point of view as well.
absolutely. Nick, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon, as always, and I look forward to catching up again soon. Cheers.
Joshua, thank you, man. Speak to you soon.